Clay is the quiet killer of construction in the UK. Don't believe me? What if I told you that 20 to 25% of the UK's soil is clay? I wasn't expecting you to know that, but you probably know enough about clay to know that it's a problem. Don't panic. In this video, we're going to cover everything you need to know about clay and how to overcome it. Firstly, let's take a look at why clay is a problem. It's no secret in the UK that the weather is unpredictable. This means changes in temperature, but more specifically moisture. And that's when clay gets to work. Clay can shrink or expand up to 30% from its dormant size. It's also incredibly dense, which means it can put enough pressure on concrete to cause detrimental damage. The concrete in your foundations would be weaker and eventually fail. That's when the structure begins to sink into the earth and eventually collapse altogether. Here's how you fix it. We need to get down to those soil layers that are good, that we can build off of. So piling is the way to go, but there are a couple of steps that we need to take before we can just go ahead and pile the foundations. Firstly, we need to auger holes for these piles and install something called a slip sleeve. This is to stop the pile from getting a false set, where the clay hugs the pile and stops it from reaching better soil. That's what's known as skin friction. It's no longer a problem as long as you use slip sleeves. Let's move on to clay heave now. Clay heave is a material that you put as a barrier between the concrete and the clay. What it does is it absorbs all of that shrinking and swelling year after year after year after year, and it prevents the concrete from ever having any damage caused to it from that clay. Finally, we install the ring beam, the steelwork. That adds structural soundness to it, of course, and then you pour your concrete and then your foundations are finished. And that clay heave acts as a barrier between the clay and the foundations. Should never see a problem with that ever again. That's the theory. Let's go see it in practice on a real job site. So now that we've done all of that preparation, we finally arrive at this stage of the job, actually arriving on site. So as you can see behind me, we're already pre-augering all of these holes, and we're installing the slip sleeves too. Once we've completed this step for all 12 of those piles, we can actually begin driving them. So it's the day that we've all been waiting for, the day of actual piling works. Luckily for this customer, this first pile that we've driven has only gone to 2 meters. That's great for them because it means that they're not going to have to pay for any extra piles that sometimes happens. It's also great for us as a company because it means that we can drive all of these piles today, so much quicker. So let's talk a little bit about why we're actually here. This right here is clay. As you can see, it starts pretty soon after this top soil layer. And in its current condition, it's not going to do anything to your foundations. However, right now it's warm and dry. In winter, it's going to be cold and wet a lot. And when clay gets cold and wet, it expands. Which direction do you think that this clay is going to go? The clay expands, puts pressure on the concrete cracks, the cracks cause instability, the foundations fail. So let's have a look at how we can fix that problem with something in the industry known as clay heave. Clay problems usually constitute two different types of clay heave. This one is installed first because it sits at the bottom of the trench, and then the ring beam is installed on top so that when the whole thing is filled with concrete, you end up with a buffer between the actual soil and the concrete to prevent that clay from causing damage from underneath. The second one is much thinner and it goes along the walls of the trench like this. That's to prevent the clay from squeezing in on the foundations themselves, which is ideal. With the final pile now driven and all of the clay heave installed, it's now time for concrete, which is being installed first thing tomorrow.
You know what it is. Block with the burners, nasty tonight. God damn it. Hey, yo, London, dungeon.
Before our involvement in this project, clay was a huge concern. I'm glad to say that's no longer the case, because the foundations are finished behind me right now. We hope that you've learned something from the video and you enjoyed it. And if this is a service that you may need in the future, I implore you to get in touch with us, because we offer a site inspection for free, which means that even if you decide not to go with us or not to go with piling altogether, at the very least, you'll get some sound advice from some professionals who have been doing it for a while. So, thank you for watching.
Block with the burners, nasty tonight. God damn it. Hey, yo, London, dungeon.